I am back, coming to you live from the living room. I'm pretty confident I've never done a live stream from the living room. I have not made it out to the studio yet since I've been home. Haven't even attempted, but it will have to happen here sooner or later as things start to improve. So, as many of you know, I was in an accident. We got to spend a lot of time on Thursday watching some of the world-class groups like the Troopers and Phantom Regiment, Carolina Crown. I think we stayed till the very end, which was probably around midnight or so that it had wrapped up. And Mary left with the Corps because she was volunteering with them. Jude and I left, and everybody's grabbing these scooters and they're buzzing around the city, going to their hotels or wherever. And Jude and I jumped on one and rode to the hotel, no problem. Went to sleep. Got the scoring back and found out that the battalion would be performing again on Friday as we had anticipated. Mark Grubert, thank you. Thanks, man. So as we anticipated that the battalion would make it till Friday, and they did. And I think they performed somewhere around 1:45, 2 o'clock in the afternoon-ish. Me and Jude needed to be back over to our hotel about 4:30 so that we could Uber to the airport and get through security and all that before our flights left at, I think, 7:30 or something on Friday. So, watched the battalion. Mary was down there with them, with the Corps, and they went and they changed and all that. And then Ian came back and had lunch with us in the stadium. And we said, well, we need to get booking back to the hotel so that we can get our luggage and make it to the airport and all that on time. So we left about 4 o'clock, left the stadium. We had to cross the street. You can't park the scooters at the stadium themselves, but there was just this sea of scooters available. So me and Jude jumped on one and started riding. Came up to the crosswalk that we were normally going across, and it was, you had to wait for traffic. And I figured, well, let's just go down to the next intersection, and then we'll cross over. So in that split moment, I decided to go a different direction from what we had been going. And so Jude's on the scooter with me, and, I'm not being reckless or anything. I'm 52 years old, and I've got my 11-year-old son on a scooter. Want to be safe, and just driving along, and suddenly I see this big drop off, and there's no chance whatsoever that I can stop in time. And I just knew we were going to crash. I didn't know how, and all this stuff happens in milliseconds. And my first thought was to protect Jude. And how I did that, I don't know. But we went off this big drop off and crashed really, really hard. And I remember that I was, and it's oncoming traffic too, by the way. And I didn't want to crash and get hit by a car, because that was we were so close to that as well. So I'm kind of over Jude, and I can just feel a lot of pain in my body. And you kind of do that self-assessment test when you hurt yourself really bad. You're like, can I wiggle my toes? Can I wiggle my fingers? Can I turn my head? You're self-evaluating like what could be wrong, minus the road rash. So I went to push myself up off of Jude, and I tried to get my legs under me, and it felt like I didn't have a leg. And it was painful, but not as painful as it was becoming. And Chris Brown says, look at the rock star kicking ass and looking good. Prayers for you, brother. Thank you, Chris. So I got up off of Jude, and I laid backwards on the ground, and Jude got up, and Jude, of course, is crying, and he's upset, and he's scared because he doesn't know what's wrong either. And so I told Jude, I said, Jude, I'm hurt really bad. I think I broke my knee. I'm pretty sure I broke my knee. And other than Jude got scraped up out on his elbows and on his knees pretty road rashy and bleeding. And I said, Jude, you need to sit back. And so he went to stand up and sit back, and he sat right on my chest, which is funny now. But at the time, it was like, oh, don't sit on me. So he sat next to me on the curb, and I told Jude, I said, Jude, I think that you are okay, but my leg is broken. And I said, I know that you're hurt, but I'm going to need you to help me. And something in Jude just clicked. And he said, oh, okay, Dad, I got this. And he patted me on the shoulder and said, don't worry, Dad, you're going to be okay. So I have these little, I know, these touching little moments. Ooh. Still get me. Whoo. So, I knew that I needed to call 911, so I grabbed my phone, called 911. I was laying there, and then people were driving by and stopping to check to see if we were okay. Some people had actually witnessed this happen, and then they went around the block to come check on us again. But traffic was super heavy. And that's where Jude was really helpful in talking with people to find out our location, because I didn't know what street we were on or what we were near, and so just trying to describe where we were. But Jude did a great job of talking to people and relaying information back to me on where we were so that the ambulance could come and get us. So in the time I'm laying there, of course, a lot of people coming by on scooters. I heard people behind me coming up, and I would hear skidding, like people grabbing the brakes because they didn't see this drop off either. And they got right to the edge, and they're like, oh my gosh, are you guys okay? We didn't see this either, this drop off. And so we had a lot of people checking on us. One guy ended my ride on my bird scooter for me. I said, can you end the ride on this? I don't want to pay for this thing while I'm sitting here waiting for an ambulance to come and get me. So we had some people help out in that way. And it was nice, the concern that people had. They just didn't just walk by and stare at the situation. So I tried calling Mary, and she didn't answer because, of course, she's in the stadium watching drum corps. So I texted her, and I said, hey, Jude and I were in a scooter crash. I'm pretty sure my leg is broken. This isn't a joke. And I'm not sure if or how this will affect our flights, because I wasn't really sure what was wrong exactly. I just knew that it was hurting really, really bad. So by the time the ambulance got there, Mary also showed up, which she rode a scooter over to get to us, and some other friends with the drum corps. So our friends were checking out Jude, and all the drum corps have medical staff that travel with them. And, Jude seemed to be walking around fine and kind of beat up and scraped up, but decided they would take Jude to the medical staff for the battalion and get checked out. And so he left with them. Mary left with me in the ambulance. And when they were trying to get me onto the stretcher on the ambulance, they had to get a tarp underneath me, and I had my right leg crossed over my left leg because that was the only position I was in that felt comfortable, all things considered. And they went to lift my right leg over, and when they did, all the muscles around my knee contracted really, really hard, and so it's like it pulled my knee up towards my chest, and the pain the pain was unbearable, and I was, of course, screaming and yelling, and there wasn't anything they could do except get me to the hospital. And they got me to Eskenazi Hospital, which is a level 1 trauma center, Mayor.
And county.
So got there to the ER. They got some pain meds started in an IV for me. and they had to give me a second dose pretty quickly, and so that they could assess what was all wrong with me, getting my back checked out, and making sure I didn't have any other injuries other than the obvious. They first looked at my left leg because it was the one that was bleeding so bad from being cut up and road rash, but it was my right knee that was swollen up like a volleyball, and that was the big issue. So got into x-rays, and then after x-rays they took me to get a CT scan, which gave them a 3D image of the problem. And while all that's going on, getting the results of that, they got me up to a room and got me stabilized. And the one thing that really helped, other than pain meds, was some muscle relaxer, because my muscles around the knee kept just freaking out and tightening up so bad. And when it would do that, it just seemed to hold on forever. And the pain of that was nothing like anything I've ever experienced before. So finally got some muscle relaxers so that my muscles would stop contracting like that, and they were able to get my legs straightened out, relatively speaking. And then, eventually got doctors that came in and said, yes, you need to have surgery right away. So they scheduled me for surgery on Saturday. And through all of this, Mary's tried to manage dealing with Ian with the drum corps, because they still had another day of activities to do. And then dealing with Delta Airlines to try to cancel our flights and try to get credits for our flights and that kind of thing. And that alone took like 5.5 hours of her dealing with that to try to get that squared away. And so she and Jude left and went back to the drum corps. So Jude was able to travel with the drum corps. I went to surgery Saturday morning, and they put 2 big rods in my lower leg near my ankle, and then 2 big rods high up on my hip, and then this metal bar on the outside clamping me together to realign those bones and kind of get everything somewhat back into place. That thing was really painful to have on. And I know some of you out there have probably had arm breaks and leg breaks and things, and had some kind of external hardware to have exposed for some period of time. And I can agree that it's incredibly painful to be having those things. So, at that point, we're just pain management, and the swelling was so bad that they couldn't do the full surgery in the first one. So they did that's called an external fixer, I believe is the name of that. And so then the staff just had to wait and see what kind of swelling would go down so that they could schedule the second surgery. So by Wednesday night, they thought if the progression of swelling going down was going to continue like it was, they could schedule me for last Tuesday morning, which is what happened. So Chris Brown says, Bionic Drummer 2.0. Look out, Steve Austin. Joseph says, good morning. Good to see you going forward. Thank you. Kat is here. Thank you very much, guys. So yeah, there's all of this stuff happening. Matt Muckle, my buddy. I'm really praying for you. God be with you. I'm just finding all this out. Oh man, Matt, I messaged you some pictures too, if you could stomach them. Yeah, they might be a little hard to look at for somebody. So essentially what happened is in the accident, my femur came down and against my tibia, and it shoved my tibia over 3 inches and broke this big section off of my tibia. So in the second surgery, they went in and they installed plates on both sides of my bone, and then 13 screws to pull all that back together and put it in place. And also while they did that, they fixed my meniscus, because the meniscus received damage in that as well. It got pummeled and then shoved to the side, so they had to reattach that and bring it back over in place where it was supposed to be. So all the staff and everything at Eskenazi Hospital, from the EMTs, the x-ray people, all the nursing staff, all the doctors, the meal people, the cleaning people, everybody was top notch and very caring, and it was nice because I had several of the same nurses for the entire week I was there, so it wasn't like I was having to reintroduce myself or the situation over and over to people. Mary got Ian dropped off at the airport. What morning was that? Saturday night, late Sunday morning.
Around midnight.
So I think it was by like Sunday afternoon ish. Mary and Jude came back to the hospital, and because of the circumstances and being out of town and 1,600 miles away from home, Mary and Jude were allowed to stay in the hospital with me, which was great because we didn't have to get a hotel for them to stay in. And then Mary was great help, of course, helping out, getting ice around my leg, and taking care of all these sudden things. And then, the wonder of how long are we going to be here? Is it going to be a second surgery and then we can go? Or is there going to be a third? There was talk of a third surgery, like maybe they can only do half. And, we just see dollar signs in our head just rolling by and adding up really quick. And so through all of this, my friends over at the Drummers Education Connection, which you've heard me talk about quite a bit, have become extremely great friends of mine. And so Bart Robley called me and said, hey, whatever students you have this week that, you want us to teach, we'll teach free of charge. We don't want you to lose out on your income, which was very touching and helpful. So I was able to, excuse me a second here. I was able to get my schedule, and I texted about 20 some of my students, and I said, hey, here's an opportunity. First of all, I had to text all my students and let them know what was happening, that I wouldn't be teaching that week, but here's an opportunity for you to continue with your lessons through Zoom or Skype with these friends of mine. And so I think most everybody took advantage of that, which relieved a lot of pressure for me, because I like to keep my commitments. So those guys took over my teaching schedule for last week, which was amazing. And on top of it, opportunities that were coming my way that are no longer available because I'm injured and I can't walk, I can't drum. I'm not going to be able to walk for, the timeline is 10 to 12 weeks with this type of injury. I'd like it to be shorter than that, of course, if I can. Rebooking flights was a snafu. They didn't, Delta wasn't coming through on their end with credits on plane tickets and things like that. So that's something that still needs to be rectified. But until that can happen, we had to pay for plane tickets out of pocket again. I got a walker from the hospital, which was probably 3-4 times the amount of instead of just buying one off of Amazon, but I had to travel with one. Mary got me a special seat with handles that goes over our toilet. That's you start discovering these things, being injured like this, things you take for granted, as something as simple as going to the bathroom is now really, really hard to do and difficult to manage. So got a special seat for that, which is extremely helpful. And then we had to get another seat that bridges over our tub, because we have a tub shower combo thing in the bathroom. So in order for me to shower and to clean up, I needed a special chair with that. Serena said, so cool of Bart to do that for us. I actually really enjoyed the lesson. Awesome. Kat Dooley, we should do a benefit show together for you. Then she says, this might be helpful. If you need help on the Delta situation, let me know. I work for an airline and know how to get them to refund tickets. Seriously. Kat, I will definitely like to talk to you about that. That would be great. Muckle, wow. This restored some of my faith in humanity. Yes, things you take for granted. Yeah, man. Because, you know, when you're dealing with the airlines, well, actually, when you're dealing with most anything these days, it's all automated through the computer and like a virtual assistant kind of a situation, or, you know, they have these systems in place to try to streamline things, which I think is great until there's a problem and you actually need to speak with somebody, and finding a solution in there can be has proven to be a challenge. And you know, it's upsetting too, trying to explain your situation to some AI assistant. That's super frustrating. So yes, Kat, that would be awesome. I appreciate that, because Mary and I were just talking yesterday. I said, do we know anybody that works for the airlines that can actually help us resolve this? Not that we need money back into our pocket necessarily, but at least some kind of credit that could be with an airline, because we do travel off and on. So, you know, spending money on things that you thought, well, you wouldn't need to, you know. Mary had to go buy clothes for me because they cut my clothes off in the hospital so they could work on me. Yeah, just, and that kind of stuff adds up pretty quick. You know, booking flights, there was this balance of like, because we wanted to be home, but we also wanted me to be stable enough and strong enough to be able to travel home. And, you know, there was talk of renting a car and driving all that way, which, you know, if I wasn't hurt and we had time to sightsee, I think that would be great. But needing to be home quick and just dealing with life in general was important, that we got home in a timely manner. So talking to the doctors and what the swelling might be like, we decided that we would aim for coming home this past Friday night. So we left the hospital around 3 in the afternoon, I believe. Yeah. Mary had to make sure we got an Uber that was a minivan, because we have a minivan and we know how easy it is to get in and out of the minivan, just the seat height compared to like actually having to sit. Got to the airport and arranging somebody to wheel me around in a wheelchair, which that wasn't a difficult task. That happened pretty easily. But walking on this walker, that wears me out pretty quick. I'm going to have pretty strong arms hauling myself around. My left leg is probably going to be bigger from balancing me about. So, you know, it's one day at a time. We're getting this worked out and figured out how all this is going to go. So this week with my teaching schedule, I have a former student who is doing almost all my lessons in person, and then I have 6 or 7 that I'm doing through my Zoom lesson app. So did one of those yesterday. It was fine. I sat right here on the couch and did that. So generally speaking, in lessons, I don't do a lot of drumming myself. It's more observing and direction and those kind of things. So thankfully, I'm going to be able to keep teaching. That's not going to really stall too much. The big disappointment, though, in all of this is that I had some opportunities that were coming my way that looked like, you know, that would help advance my career forward, and those came to a screeching halt. And so I was pretty upset with that, and not to say that I'm not upset about it anymore, but it is a huge bummer because you do all this work to try to get things in place, and now this happens. So having things that were in line for drumming went out the window, and so that really bummed me out, of course. So now what? So now what do I do? I was laying in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling more often than not. I have the sign memorized above my head that said, "Call, don't fall." And a picture of a guy falling in one of those yellow cautionary signs. Feeling pretty down about the situation. And I had talked to my dad on the phone a few times, and I've talked to Bart Robley several times because we were talking about lessons and the GoFundMe thing and things like that. And then just talking to the staff as they came in the room. I was finding myself having a little trouble with the sense of humor side of things. I had some friends that made some remarks that were intended to be funny, but they just at that moment didn't seem funny. One was like, "Suck it up, Buttercup. You shouldn't have been driving reckless. You shouldn't have been doing this," or whatever, trying to be funny, which I, at the moment, wasn't taking it as a joke. It just seemed a little inappropriate, I guess, for the situation. Another person said, "Just rub some dirt in it and walk it off." Again, I don't think they meant any harm by that, but I just didn't have a sense of humor as far as that goes at that moment. So, in a lot of pain that was coming and going, and depending on how my body felt, affected my voice. So, and Mary pointed this out, and I thought it was really a great observation, is when I was laying in bed and I was talking on the phone, and my voice would be like kind of like this, and I would be talking and just kind of like, like this, and really weak and frail sounding, which I am weak and frail. But Mary thought, if I could try to talk as normal as possible, like have my mindset in such a way that came from a place of strength and hope rather than hopelessness and weakness, right? So that was kind of a little profound moment right there in the hospital when she said that. And so since that moment, I've been trying to talk in a more normal manner. And I think that helps quite a bit. Mark, my buddy, we sure missed you and Stanley gigs over the weekend. Oh, I missed it too. I was really missing that. Serena says, "It's hard to have a sense of humor when your life has just been turned upside down." Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a self-employed drummer, and so my life revolves around music. My life has always revolved around music. Just happens over the last few years that is my living, is playing drums. And now I have a broken leg. I can't sit at a drum set yet. I can't drum with my right foot yet. I can't do gigs yet. I can't, I was scheduled to track 3 drum tracks last week. So that's been put on hold. And if that person finds another drummer because of whatever their schedule, then, that's what they got to do, right? Because they have their timeline. So maybe my timeline may no longer match theirs. And so, there's a lost opportunity. There's a lost income with that. Midline was scheduled to play August 29th at the Revolution Concert House, opening up for Hinder. And, Midline's my baby. That's been my main thing for most of my life is Midline. And any opportunity for that band to play in a environment that we think is appropriate for that band is those are great things. And the whole rest of the band is looking forward to those shows too. And now this happened and had to cancel. Not only did we have to cancel, but I did tell the guys, I said, look, I don't have a problem if you wanted to have a sub drummer for that gig. And Anthony said, dude, it's not Midline without you. So that was pretty nice. Christian Housel, I love you too, man. Love you too. So now what? I have all of these obstacles in the way that are affecting so many different lanes of traffic for me. I could choose to wallow in the woe is me stuff and to be bummed out and disappointed, which I'm sure there's going to be different degrees of that come and go. For one, I can keep teaching, which I love teaching. I'll be able to keep that schedule. And it's not just if I do it. I have a former student who I mentioned earlier is subbing for me. And I think sometimes, too, it's good for students just to have some exposure to some other people occasionally just for different perspective reasons. Because I don't know everything. I just know my process. And sometimes people look at things just a slightly different way, and you just have these little light bulb moments. So that part's great. The other is I can still network with people and keep building those relationships. One of the networking thing, I've talked about off and on over is had I not been networking to the degree I have already, the GoFundMe thing may not have had as much success as it did, which is pretty extraordinary to see how that has worked out and benefited me. Tom Keithley, hey buddy, what can I do from the couch? Now I'm going to operate my business from the couch for a little while. Like, what does that look like? But part of Drummer's Education Connection is community. And Bart, in the early stages of the GoFundMe, said this will be a true test to see if everybody that promotes the community of drumming to actually follow through with that. And it did. It was extraordinary. The networking thing, I can continue working on my list of people that I want to work with and connect with. And so the guys with Drummers Education Connection, Matt Starr, who has been a huge role model for me in my whole drumming business. And Matt just found out a couple days ago that this had happened, and so he messaged me and he said, hey, let's have a phone call conversation sometime in the near future, because he liked my outlook on all of this stuff. Talking with him, Matt Muckle, who's currently drumming for Kingdom Come, he and I become friends too. We're all drummers out there, and we're doing what we can to make a living and to hopefully make a comfortable living, which I'm on that trajectory, and it's just great, the community support that's happened. The other thing is I've got 2 websites that need to stay updated, and so we can be working on those. On my Fred Rock School of Drumming page, I have a store, and that has equipment that I recommend to my students with Amazon links. So being an Amazon associate for affiliate marketing, so when I recommend gear to my students and they buy through Amazon, I get a percentage of that sale. So this is an opportunity for me to really zero in on every single thing it is that I buy and use for drumming or that affects drumming. And it's a narrowed down resource for other drummers to look at and say, oh, I want this kind of a drum stool, or I want this drum rug, or I want whatever it may be, and that they can go and purchase that, and then I benefit too from those kind of things. So Serena said, Drew was amazing yesterday. Drew is my former student who was subbing for me. He totally helped me get rolls and triplets click in my head. Awesome. James Harrison, my good friend James. Fred, you've always been a positive guy. You will get back to being you. You're an inspiration to many just by the way you're handling this setback. Thank you so much. Trinette, welcome home. Glad to see you. Trying to keep a positive outlook. Love you, my friend. Good luck in your recovery. Thanks, Trinette. And I like seeing the video of I believe you were at the Kansas concert last night. Dust in the Wind is always a hit. And I think that was one of the videos. Jeff, man, stick with it. God has a plan even when things don't seem to make any sense. Yes, that is true. It is going to work out great in the end. Sorry you guys are enduring my drippy nose. Heidi, thank you so much for your support too, Heidi. Breaking your leg is a big setback. I think, the swelling in my right leg has Sonny says Fred equals resilient. Thank you, Sonny. That Friday night that we flew home, the swelling in my right leg was so bad it just felt like it could just explode. Yeah, which it didn't, but it felt that way. My skin was stretched so tight. So getting the swelling to come down is going to be a major factor in feeling better. My neighbor, Doug, had some knee replacement, I think, or knee surgery not long ago. He gave me this really cool contraption. It's an ice cooler, recirculating ice cooler. And so I have this big, it's not a knee brace, but it kind of looks like that wraps around your knee. And then it circulates ice water through that brace, which feels absolutely wonderful when it's on. And that really has helped a lot in keeping the swelling in check. And of course, Mary has been my nurse, and she's keeping me on track with my medications and things like that. Some of the harder medications I have been able to take less and less of. Taking less and less of the hard medications, just in my mind, is better. So we can just get down to the Tylenol and Advil pain management, which is great. I do have my moments where the pain will kind of spike, and I'll have to have something a little harder hitting than normal. So I don't believe that I have a cold. I think it's just this smoky air that we have constantly going here in the Treasure Valley is definitely affected my breathing. So, sometimes I'm just a little congested in the morning regardless. Greg says, I had a similar accident and surgery years and years ago. I used it as an opportunity to learn guitar. Well, there you go. It's a long road ahead. There's no way around that. I just know that every single day is a day that's closer to walking again. It's a day that's closer to drumming again. It's a day that's closer to just being back to, doing the simple things, like going to the bathroom. And I have trouble sleeping at night. As you can imagine, it's really uncomfortable. But sometimes when I get out here to the couch and I'll turn a movie on, just that the sound of a movie going and just the position I can get in helps me go to sleep. And sleeping has been so crucial in all of this, because I really haven't had a good night's sleep at all since August 8th, the night before my accident. So that's been a little while ago. I will tell you, the night last Tuesday, so it's been a week since I had the surgery that fixed everything. That night I slept really, really hard. Really, really hard. I had the 2 nerve blocks that hadn't worn off yet, so I didn't really feel my leg at all. The nursing staff would come in and touch my toes. I couldn't feel that at all. I couldn't do anything. I did sleep pretty sound for several hours that night. But thank you for the prayers and the well wishes and all the positive messaging. I really, really appreciate all of that. It's been very helpful, and seeing the community at large, especially my hometown community, and the amount of help I've received from that has been extraordinary. So thank you again and again and again. I really, really appreciate it. It's nice to see people rally around other people. It's encouraging. It's encouraging to see humanity loving on one another and supporting one another, because we're in a pretty heated political state at the moment, where there's just so much ugliness on social media that revolves around that, which I stay completely uninvolved on social media as far as politics goes. And I've kept my newsfeed pretty clean for the most part, of regardless if I'm for or against what anybody's posting. But just to see the attacks and the ugliness and stuff is bums me out. So when somebody, not just me, but somebody else has an issue and they need some help, and see people rally around that, just for the good of that person, that's inspiring, and it's good to see. Greg says, "You are a good person and a shining light, my friend. I am glad that you are home and resting easy." Thank you, Greg. I think this is probably the longest I've sat up in an up position like this and not winced in pain. So that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Yeah, I'll keep everybody updated as progress happens, and because it will be progress. I know I have a Zoom meeting with a doctor today, and I think the purpose of that one is there's all these things that pop up that you don't consider. One is having a handicap pass to be able to park closer to a building, or a business, to get in easier. It never even crossed my mind until a couple days ago. Mary brought that up, or somebody told Mary, "Hey, does Fred have a handicap thing that you guys could park closer?" Never even crossed my mind. So that's what's going to happen. We already have a doctor and physical therapy stuff lined out, which that stuff will start rolling here soon. I don't know if I have the exercises the physical therapy gals gave me that I'm doing currently. But I am supposed to have stitches removed sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So there's that. We'll see where the insurance lands with what they will or won't cover. Hopefully everything. It's hard to say at this point.